Their recent Pokemon Presents gave us a full first look at Pokemon Legends CA, and actually showed way more than I thought it would. After a full year of speculation based only on a CGI trailer, it's nice to see so much all at once. We've got confirmation on lots of highly debated topics, such as the time period the game takes place in, the starters or first partner Pokemon, and a new look into an experimental real-time battle system. Pretty exciting stuff all around, but it feels like the perfect time to shoot for a few more details, hopes, and things that caught my attention ahead of the upcoming wave of new trailers. In no particular order, I might as well start with, well, the starters. An interesting lineup to say the least. Can't say I have a clear frontrunner at the moment, but the choices are pretty odd. I wonder if there may be some pair of Johto and Unova characters, perhaps descendants of characters we know, who will give you these Pokemon, explaining why they're even here, and why two of them hail from the same generation. Either way, the leading theory seems to be that their final evolutions will either get new Mega Evolutions or new regional variants, and my hope is that they get the latter, some form of Colossian or Lumiose City version, with new types, not unlike the Hisuian starters. Which leads me to point number 2, Colossian forms? There's no guarantee these will show up in CA. Scarlet and Violet already had very few regional variants compared to Generation 7 and 8, in favor of the brand new Convergent species, and of course, Paradox Pokemon. I'm all for the idea, as you might have guessed. Regional variants are one of my absolute favorite concepts from modern day Pokemon, but it's hard to tell if they'll come back or not, going off the current Gen 9 precedent. Megas are coming back, of course, and that raises a few questions. Naturally, the one in everyone's mind is, where's the new Megas? And I have fairly strong opinions about Mega Evolution designs, but conceptually, I quite like the idea of mid-battle power-ups. In particular, I think we all want to see the Kalos starters getting in on their generational gimmick. In fact, I would really appreciate it if Kalos Pokemon were the focus of new Mega designs. Only Diancie got a Mega Evolution back in Generation 6, and I always found it so odd. There's plenty of good candidates, even though I can understand other fans wanting Megas from Unova or even newer generations too. I just think it's a shame that if you're like me and play through games with only new Pokemon, you'd go through a full Kalos playthrough without ever interacting with the Mega mechanic. I hope if we do get new ones, which I'd say is very likely, they focus a bit more on subtle designs rather than adding spikes everywhere. And independently of if we get new ones or not, can we expect all Megas to return? We've seen Megas from X and Y, as well as some from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but will we see Mega Rayquaza or Latios and Latias flying around Lumiose City? Will the Hoenn starters migrate into the city somehow? Perhaps they'd be brought over by some new descendant character, tying it all together into a Hoenn-focused Delta side quest. Perhaps as DLC or a free update, not unlike Daybreak from Legends Arceus. Or maybe it was this guy. I keep throwing the word descendant around, but how likely is it that we'll see something like that? It's hard to say. The trailer only showed us AC as a returning character, and a bunch of characters that vaguely look like characters we know, with no concrete confirmation of anything so far. But in order for AC's hotel business to kick off, the Quasartico building to be built, and for them to start redeveloping the city, I'd say we must be looking at a Lumiose City at least a decade or two after X and Y. That's plenty of time for characters to grow older or even have children. And given how much of a focus Ancestor characters were in Legends Arceus, and Descendants in the Scarlet and Violet DLC, I'd be quite shocked if we don't see something along those lines. Perhaps an older Bonnie or Clement as two important figures in the city. Maybe an older Professor Sycamore will be revealed as the protagonist's father. Wouldn't be the first time a main character had one of those. It'd be quite a shame to not reference a good number of Colossian gym leaders, rivals, and various other important characters while revisiting the region. But the shot of Luker's bureau makes me think we will indeed see older versions of characters we know, such as Emma, which has me quite thrilled. Speaking of characters, is Quasartico evil? I know it's hardly an original thought, and those kinds of rug pulls have been all too frequent in recent Pokemon generations. But who are they really? The remains of Team Flare? Or will Team Flare perhaps come back in another form as an antagonistic force? Or, like the Galaxy Expedition team, will they be on the good guys' side this time around? Maybe led by Malva? As for AC's Floette, the Eternal Flower Floette, this feels like the perfect opportunity to finally obtain this special cut Pokemon. But why would AC part ways with it, and give it to us? Maybe we'll prove ourselves worthy of taking it with us to explore Lumiose, or maybe we'll obtain an Eternal Flower item to give to any Flabébé of ours. With a few exceptions, Legends Arceus featured almost all Pokemon from the Sinnoh regional dex, plus all the brand new Generation 4 Pokemon. With that in mind, I think we'll be getting a significantly reduced regional Pokédex this time around. Kalos introduced the smallest amount of brand new Pokemon out of any generation, and yet, conversely, it has the largest regional Pokédex to date with over 450 Pokemon. Considering the new active time battle style and how Legends Arceus only included 242 Pokemon total, we're certainly only going to see a small portion of that regional dex, prioritizing Pokemon with Megas and the Gen 6 newcomers, obviously. I'd frankly be quite shocked if we got more Pokemon than PLA, or maybe there will be a severely reduced number of moves for Pokemon to learn to accommodate for the large roster of monsters using them with this brand new battle style. Which makes me wonder, how much room is there for new designs? With a limited number of spots to fill and so many Pokemon in the Kalos dex, will we even see any regional variants or evolutions? I think if it were up to me, I'd be okay with a smaller number of returning Pokemon in favor of new Kalosian forms or evolutions to buff up the small number of Kalos native Pokemon, but perhaps the resources will go into new Megas instead. Moving on to more specifics, Lumiose City is full of little mysteries, like the Ghost Girl and the message in the train station. I hope we'll learn more about these things now that we're getting a game all about this city. Similarly, will we be able to do all the things we could in X and Y? Riding Go-Go, shooting PR videos, work at hotels, visit museums? Ideally, I'd love to see even more new activities in the city besides those, and catching Pokemon of course. But I know better than to expect so much. At least we've got to be able to style our Furfrou, which leads me to Furfrou. Not a particularly exciting Pokemon to most, but will the different trim styles finally become permanent and stay while Furfrou is in the box? That'd be nice to not have to rely on Pokemon Go's region locks for living form decks. Maybe Quasartico could invent a new permanent hairspray. This one's a minor hope, but will we see roller skates returning? Although bikes were still faster, I love the skates in X and Y. They fit so well with the fashionable aesthetic of Kalos. It'd be a nice way to travel around the city. There could even be a skate park in it. I'm sure Corina or her descendants would appreciate it. And on the subject of game mechanics, will we see Pokemon eggs return? Not that they're a necessary feature for the enjoyment of a game. Legends Arceus didn't even have them, as they likely hadn't been discovered yet. But it can really streamline the process of getting a living dex, especially with Pokemon that are quite hard to catch, like the starters. With CA taking place after X and Y, it would make sense for some sort of daycare to show up in the city. Of course, Zygarde will play a big role in this game. We've seen a Zygarde cell atop a building, which I'll assume will be a form of collectible, not unlike the Wisps in Legends Arceus. But will Zygarde become a more active companion in any capacity? I'd love for 10% Zygarde to become a sort of sidekick, sniffing out hidden items, helping the player distract wild Pokemon. It doesn't seem like it'll be the case, as it's probably mostly going to show up in relevant cutscenes, but I'd love for some more interactivity with this underrated doggy. I don't at all expect this game to have online connectivity as Scarlet and Violet had. The Legend series seems to be fairly single-player oriented, but I do wonder if we'll see a feature similar to retrieving lost satchels make a return, or perhaps some new kind of online side game. I'd be all for union circles of friends exploring Lumiose together though, but With the new battle system, it feels fairly unlikely. Surely trading will remain a feature though. Lastly, I'll close things out with the hope that, the game runs well. Visually, it feels like a decent step up from Scarlet and Violet's environments, likely helped by a more limited draw distance interrupted by buildings. Although, those are full of repeated window PNGs, but the performance will be quite a defining factor in how much I can enjoy this game. I don't mind occasional frame drops, and I'll be happy with a steady 30 FPS, if I'm honest. I just hope the game doesn't turn into a slideshow like Scarlet and Violet often would. And, hopefully it's also much less glitchy. As I'm sure you can tell, I'm pretty excited about Legend CA. Let's all hope the extra year of development went a long way into making the game as enjoyable as possible. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more down the line. With CA news coming out throughout the year, I'm sure I'll find more topics like these to talk about. Maybe I'll go into detail about those Mega Evolution opinions, and which Pokemon I hope get new forms. Who knows? But for now, thanks for watching. See ya!